AITA for refusing to attend my cousin's wedding because of my aunt's behavior. So, this is going to be long, but I really need an outside perspective because my family's blowing up my phone about this, and I honestly don't know if I'm being unreasonable. I, 28F, come from a fairly large family. My parents had 3 kids. I have 2 older brothers, and my mom has a sister, which is my aunt, who I'll refer to as Janet, 50SF. Janet has always been a bit controlling, but I tolerated her because she's family. However, things escalated recently, and it has me questioning my own boundaries. My cousin, Emily, 27F, who is Janet's daughter, got engaged a few months ago. She's been planning a wedding that's in about 3 months. Now, Emily and I have always been close. We grew up together, shared bedrooms on visits, and confided in each other about everything. I was genuinely excited when she got engaged and couldn't wait to celebrate with her. I expected it to be a happy occasion. But then Janet started interfering in ways that made me uncomfortable, and I had to draw a line. To give some context, Janet has always had this habit of inserting herself into other people's decisions and acting like she knows what's best for everyone. It started subtly when I bought my first apartment. She offered unsolicited advice, then criticized my furniture choices, the color scheme, and even how I arrange my kitchen. My mom always says she has good intentions, but it always felt more like control than care. Over the years, I've tried to keep interactions polite, but minimal because the criticism was relentless. Fast forward to the wedding planning. Emily invited me early on to help her with ideas for the venue, decorations, and guest list. I was happy to contribute and genuinely wanted to help. I suggested a few ideas I thought Emily might like, and she was receptive. But then Janet stepped in. She insisted that every suggestion I made was wrong or not appropriate for a wedding. She critiqued the colors I suggested as being too bold, the flowers as outdated, the music as not classy enough, and even the way I wrote my RSVP as being too casual. At first, I laughed it off, thinking maybe she's just overly meticulous, but it didn't stop. What really crossed the line was when she told Emily that she shouldn't even be consulting me because I have no taste and I don't understand how proper weddings are organized. She started dictating everything. Where the bridesmaids should shop, what theme to follow, even the tone of the invitations. Emily tried to tell her she wanted my input, but Janet kept insisting she knew better and that my involvement was creating chaos. A few weeks later, Janet escalated things further. She called me and, in a rather aggressive tone, told me that my presence at the wedding would be disruptive unless I promised to stop giving suggestions entirely. She framed it like a warning, saying that if I didn't comply, I would be seen as rude and overbearing by the guests. I was shocked. This wasn't a polite request or advice. It felt like an ultimatum. I told her that I'm Emily's cousin, that I love Emily, and that I only want her wedding to be beautiful, and that if Emily still wants me involved, I would respect her decisions, but I wouldn't allow anyone to bully me out of contributing. Janet didn't respond well. She accused me of trying to control the wedding and making Emily choose between her mother and her cousin. At this point, I felt cornered. I tried talking to Emily directly, hoping to smooth things over and ask her how she really felt. Emily admitted that she wanted me there and appreciated my input, but also admitted that she didn't want to start a fight with her mother. She said she didn't know how to handle the situation and felt guilty because she didn't want to upset either of us. The turning point came last week. Janet sent out a group message to the family about the wedding. In it, she subtly disparaged me, saying things like, "We hope everyone can behave appropriately, unlike some who have a history of making a big deal out of nothing." She didn't mention me by name, but it was obvious. It felt like a public warning, and I knew if I attended, there would be tension, awkward stares, and likely more passive-aggressive comments. I reached a breaking point. After much deliberation, I called Emily and told her that I would not be attending the wedding if Janet was going to behave like this. I explained that it wasn't about Emily, but about my own mental health and boundaries. Emily was upset, but eventually understood that I couldn't put myself in a toxic situation. She said she loved me and that she didn't want me to stress out, but she did wish I could be there. Since then, the rest of the family has been contacting me. My mom says I'm being dramatic and that I should rise above Janet's behavior for Emily's sake. My brothers say I'm making a big deal over nothing, and a few cousins have reached out with mixed reactions. Some supportive, some saying I'm overreacting. Janet herself has texted me calling me selfish and saying that I'm ruining the family's happiness by refusing to attend. I feel like I made a choice that prioritizes my mental well-being, which has been compromised by years of Janet's controlling behavior. But I can't shake the feeling that maybe I'm being unreasonable, especially since this is Emily's big day. I don't want to hurt her, but I also don't want to be subjected to manipulative and demeaning behavior. I've thought about trying to go and just avoid Janet, but the wedding is in a fairly small venue, and I know I would have to interact with her at multiple points, which could turn into an argument or public embarrassment. So, AITA for refusing to attend my cousin's wedding because of my aunt's behavior? I truly wish I could be there for Emily, but I also feel like this is about protecting myself from a long-standing toxic dynamic that I finally have to enforce. I want to hear honest opinions. Am I overreacting, or am I justified in staying away to preserve my boundaries? If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after a huge fight over my partner. So, this is going to be long, but I feel like I need to explain everything properly. I, 28F, have a younger sister, Emily, 25F, and for most of our lives, we've been extremely close. She got engaged last year to her fiancé, Jason, 27M, and initially I was thrilled. I've always considered myself the cool older sister, the one who gives advice, helps with planning, and generally tries to be supportive. But things started to go sideways once my partner, Alex, 30M, got involved. Alex and I have been together for almost 4 years. He's generally great, but he has a strong personality and doesn't mince words, which sometimes clashes with people who are more sensitive. Emily and Jason are very type A, extremely organized, and honestly a bit perfectionist when it comes to social appearances and events. From the start, there was some tension because Alex would make offhand comments about how some of Emily's ideas for the wedding were over the top or unnecessarily complicated. At first, I tried to smooth things over, telling Alex to be careful, but he couldn't help himself. A few months ago, Emily invited us to a bridal dress shopping weekend. I was excited, but Alex immediately started complaining about the amount of time we'd be spending in the city and how he didn't see why the whole thing couldn't be handled online. Emily overheard him muttering something about the ridiculousness of the dresses, and she got upset. I tried to explain that Alex just doesn't have the same taste and that he didn't mean to offend, but Emily started crying, saying that he was disrespecting her and her wedding. I told her I would talk to Alex, but he refused to apologize because he claimed he hadn't said anything intentionally hurtful. We left the weekend with Emily visibly upset and Alex annoyed at me for babysitting her feelings. Things simmered for a few months, and I thought we were managing the tension. Then came the engagement party. Emily and Jason rented a small hall, and it was meant to be intimate. I was seated with Alex and some extended family, and during the toasts, Alex whispered to me that the decorations were tacky and that the hors d'oeuvres were mediocre at best. I tried to hush him, but a few people overheard. Emily noticed immediately and confronted me after the party. She accused me of letting Alex ruin the event, of not standing up for her, and implied that maybe Alex and I shouldn't come to the wedding if we couldn't respect her choices. I told her that I didn't appreciate being put in that position, that I was trying to manage a compromise, and that I thought she was overreacting. That started a huge argument over text that lasted a week. Emily started sending me long messages about how she felt I was choosing Alex over her, that I didn't understand the importance of family, and that she didn't want people who make her wedding miserable there. I tried explaining that I loved her, I wanted to support her, but I also had to consider my own boundaries and how Alex's personality interacts with social situations. She called me selfish and said she didn't see how I could bring him to the wedding without causing drama. At this point, I was getting stressed out. I didn't want to fight with my sister, but I also felt like she was being unreasonable. I tried multiple approaches, sitting down in person, calling, offering to leave Alex at home, but she refused. She said that if Alex came, she would ask him to leave. I told her that I could not attend the wedding without him because we are partners, we travel together, and I wasn't going to leave him behind like a guest coat. Then she dropped the bomb. She said that if Alex and I didn't respect her wishes, she would consider me not part of the family on the wedding day. I felt blindsided and hurt. For context, my parents are neutral. They love Emily, but they also don't want to get involved in drama. My friends were mostly telling me that I should apologize or try to keep the peace, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized I couldn't attend under these circumstances. It wasn't just about Alex's comments. It was about the principle of being told I couldn't bring my partner to my own sister's wedding because she felt uncomfortable. After much deliberation, I sent Emily a long message explaining that I would not be attending. I said I loved her, I wish her the best, and I hoped the wedding would be beautiful, but I could not go if it meant leaving Alex behind or being in an environment where our presence was seen as a problem. I didn't insult her or Jason. I tried to be as neutral and loving as possible, but firm. The fallout has been intense. Emily hasn't spoken to me in 2 weeks. My parents are upset with me, saying I should try harder to compromise for family, but I feel like I've already done that. Alex is supportive but stressed about the family tension. I tried reaching out to Emily again, but she won't answer my calls or texts. Some friends are siding with her, saying I'm letting my partner control my life, but I genuinely feel like I'm standing up for both of us. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her ultimatum about Alex? I feel like I'm protecting my relationship and personal boundaries, but I also hate that I'm hurting her on what should be one of the happiest days of her life. I can add more context about previous family conflicts if needed, but the short version is my sister is giving an ultimatum that I can't bring my partner, I refuse, and now the family is fractured. I want to do the right thing, but I also can't compromise on Alex being with me. Has anyone been in a similar situation? Was I wrong to prioritize my relationship and boundaries over attending the wedding? AITA for refusing to help my sister financially after she made some questionable life choices? I, 32F, have a younger sister, Emma, 28F, who has always been a bit impulsive with her decisions, especially when it comes to money. Growing up, we were raised by our parents in a middle-class household. Our parents were supportive, but never overly indulgent, which I think taught me the value of saving and planning ahead. Emma, on the other hand, has always been the type to live in the moment. She spends freely, often borrows without returning, and tends to make financial decisions that most people would consider risky. I've tried to guide her over the years, but it's often felt like talking to a wall. She just does whatever she wants and deals with the consequences later. A little background. I work in tech and have been fairly successful. I live modestly for my income, but have been able to save aggressively, invest, and build a cushion for emergencies. I've also prioritized paying off debt early and being financially responsible. Emma works in marketing and has a decent income, but she's always had trouble managing it. She's bounced between apartments, cars, and short-term jobs, and she has racked up a fair amount of credit card debt and some personal loans from friends and family. The problem started a few months ago. Emma called me in a panic. She had been living in a new apartment that she rented without checking her finances properly and realized she couldn't cover the rent anymore. She had no savings, her credit cards were maxed out, and she had borrowed money from a friend who was now demanding repayment. She begged me to lend her a significant sum to get her back on her feet. At first, I considered it, but I hesitated. My gut told me that this wasn't just a one-time emergency. It was a pattern of behavior. I reminded her of the past few times she had come to me for loans or bailouts, and how she had not changed her habits. I also pointed out that I had my own responsibilities and financial goals, and I couldn't jeopardize them to fix her mistakes. Emma got extremely upset. She accused me of being selfish and unsupportive. She said I was her sister and that families should help each other no matter what. She cried and told me I didn't understand how hard things were for her. I tried to empathize, but I kept to my stance. I told her I could help her figure out a budget, assist in negotiating with her landlord, or even help her find more affordable housing, but I couldn't give her the money. This didn't go over well. She stormed off and hasn't spoken to me much since. A few weeks later, our parents got involved. They called me and said that they were disappointed I wasn't helping Emma financially. They implied that I was letting my sister fail when I could easily help her. I explained my reasoning again about patterns of irresponsible behavior and the need for her to learn to manage her finances. My parents were sympathetic to my logic, but still expressed concern that I wasn't doing enough for my sister. I felt cornered and a little frustrated because, in my mind, helping her with money without her taking responsibility wouldn't actually help her. It would only enable her behavior. Emma has since been living in a small sublet, working odd jobs, and I hear she's scraping by. Our conversations are now limited and tense. I can't help but feel that my stance was reasonable. Helping her financially would be short-term relief at best and a long-term problem for both of us at worst. But I also feel guilty because I see her struggling and I worry about how my refusal looks to my parents and to Emma herself. I want to support her, but I also don't want to enable her recklessness. Adding more context, I've offered to help in other ways repeatedly. I've helped her draft a realistic budget, reviewed her expenses, and even helped her reach out to a financial counselor. I've offered to teach her how to manage her debts and build an emergency fund. But every time I suggest long-term solutions, she gets frustrated and says I don't care about her immediate problems. The tension in the family is escalating because now my parents are subtly pressuring me to give in. Emma is resentful, and I feel like I'm the villain for trying to stick to my principles. I understand that family dynamics are complicated. I also know that siblings should support each other, but I struggle with the idea of unconditional financial support when it comes to repeated patterns of self-sabotage. I feel like if I give in, I might help her in the short term, but it won't solve anything and could potentially harm my own financial stability. I also worry that it might create a precedent that I am her safety net, which I don't want to become. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to give my sister a large sum of money even though she asked for it and is struggling financially. I want to help her, but I also want her to take responsibility for her own life. Where is the line between being supportive and enabling harmful habits? I've tried to be there for her in other ways, but it doesn't seem to be enough for her or for our parents, and I feel like my relationship with both of them is suffering because of my decision. I'm torn between doing what I think is responsible and doing what my family thinks is compassionate. AITA for refusing to lend my sister money after she destroyed my trust. I, 32F, have always tried to maintain a good relationship with my younger sister, Emily, 28F, even though we've had our fair share of disagreements. Growing up, she was always the free spirit, the one who took risks and didn't think much about consequences. I, on the other hand, have always been more cautious, careful with money, and generally risk-averse. Our personalities have clashed before, but I never thought it would lead to such a big divide between us. A few months ago, Emily approached me with what seemed like a reasonable request at the time. She had gotten herself into a financial mess because she had overspent on a trip abroad and needed a quick loan to cover rent and other bills. She asked if I could lend her $5,000. That's a significant amount, and I had to think about it carefully. I asked her for a plan on how she intended to pay me back. She promised to start paying me back in installments over the next 6 months, assured me it was a temporary problem, and painted a picture of how responsible she would be going forward. I was hesitant, but I trusted her and agreed to the loan. I transferred the money to her account and thought that would be the end of the stress. Things did not go as planned. The following month, she called me in a panic, claiming that she had unexpected medical bills and needed more money. I reminded her of our agreement and told her I couldn't help beyond the original loan. She became defensive and frustrated, accusing me of not being supportive as a sister. I tried to reason with her, but the conversation ended with her hanging up on me. After that, I noticed she started posting pictures of her expensive outings, shopping sprees, and vacations on social media, which made me question whether she was really struggling financially or just prioritizing other things over repaying me. Eventually, I confronted her about the pictures and her spending habits. She told me that I didn't understand her situation and that she was allowed to enjoy life despite her financial struggles. She also mentioned that other family members were helping her, which made me feel a bit better, but didn't excuse the fact that she was avoiding paying me back. Months passed, and I had to repeatedly ask her for repayment, only to get vague promises or excuses. I realized that lending her money was a huge mistake, and it had started to impact my own finances, as I had budgeted that money for an emergency fund and some planned expenses. Then came the breaking point. Emily invited me to dinner, claiming she wanted to apologize and make things right. I was cautiously optimistic. However, during dinner, she casually mentioned that she had bought a new car and was planning another trip abroad. I was shocked and immediately called her out, saying that it seemed like she was prioritizing luxuries over repaying a family member who had helped her in her time of need. She got angry, saying I had no right to judge her choices and that she didn't owe me anything. This was confusing and hurtful because she had explicitly agreed to repay me. I reminded her of our agreement, but she dismissed it and said that family shouldn't keep track of money or debts. I left the dinner feeling disrespected and upset. After that, I decided I would no longer lend her money or assist her financially in any way. When I told her this, she accused me of being selfish and cruel, claiming that family should help each other without hesitation. Our parents, who were generally supportive of both of us, said I should try to be understanding and not make my sister feel alienated, but I felt that they weren't acknowledging the fact that my trust had been broken. I explained to them that lending money to someone who refuses to respect repayment agreements is not being unsupportive. It's protecting yourself for financial harm. I also felt that she was taking advantage of me and manipulating the situation by guilt-tripping me and framing me as the bad person for her. Setting boundaries. The conflict escalated when Emily started posting on social media about how her unsupportive sister refused to help her, which upset my friends and co-workers who knew about the situation. They began questioning why I wouldn't help her, and I had to repeatedly defend my decision. I tried to explain that I had already loaned her money, that she wasn't following through on repayment, and that continuing to give her money would be irresponsible on my part. Despite this, some people still sided with her, which made me second-guess whether I was overreacting. But every time I thought about it, I realized that my decision wasn't about being unsupportive. It was about maintaining boundaries and protecting my own financial security. Things came to a head during a family gathering. Emily confronted me in front of everyone, asking why I refused to help her again. I calmly explained the history, detailing how she had ignored repayment agreements and continued spending on non-essential items. I also mentioned that while I love her, love doesn't mean blindly enabling irresponsible financial behavior. She accused me of embarrassing her and claimed that I was acting superior and judgmental. Our parents tried to mediate, suggesting compromise or counseling, but I didn't feel any of that would solve the underlying issue. Trust had been broken. I told them I was willing to have a conversation about future interactions, but money was off the table. I felt this was reasonable. Yet Emily stormed out and hasn't spoken to me much since. Now, some extended family members are subtly criticizing me for not supporting my sister and hinting that I should forgive and forget the money issue. Meanwhile, I feel a mix of guilt, frustration, and relief. Guilt because I feel like a bad sister for not helping someone I love, frustration because it seems like my generosity was taken advantage of, and relief because I finally feel like I'm asserting boundaries and protecting my finances. I'm starting to accept that supporting someone doesn't have to involve money, especially if it risks your own security, and that sometimes love means being firm rather than permissive. So, AITA for refusing to lend my sister money after she repeatedly ignored repayment agreements and spent on non-essential luxuries while expecting me to continue helping. AITA for refusing to help my sister after she publicly humiliated me at her wedding. I, 29M, have always had a complicated relationship with my older sister, Jenna, 33F. Growing up, she was the kind of person who needed to be the center of attention. Birthdays, family dinners, holidays, everything somehow turned into a stage for her. I was the quiet kid who preferred staying out of the spotlight, so most of the time I just ignored it. Our parents always brushed it off as that's just how Jenna is, which meant she rarely faced consequences for anything. If she borrowed my things without asking, I was told to share. If she made fun of me in front of friends, I was told she was joking. Eventually, I just stopped expecting fairness and kept my distance once I moved out. Despite all that, I still tried to be supportive when she got engaged last year. Her fiancé, Mark, seemed like a decent guy, and Jenna asked me to be one of the groomsmen. I was surprised, but said yes because I thought maybe this was her way of improving our relationship. Planning the wedding was exhausting. Jenna treated it like a royal event. She had a million rules about everything from what people could wear to how they should post about it online. At one point, she even made a shared document titled Approved Wedding Hashtags. Still, I helped whenever she asked. I spent weekends helping Mark build decorations for the venue, drove 2 hours multiple times to help move supplies, and even lent them $2,000 when they said they were temporarily short on deposits. They promised to pay me back after the wedding. Fast forward to the rehearsal dinner. Everything seemed fine until Jenna started giving little speeches about the people in the wedding party. When she got to me, she suddenly decided it would be hilarious to tell a bunch of embarrassing childhood stories. At first, it was minor stuff, like how I cried when I lost a soccer game when I was 10. People laughed politely. Then she escalated. She told a story about how I got rejected in high school and claimed I didn't date anyone for years after because I was too weird. That wasn't even true. She also made a comment about how she was shocked I managed to keep a girlfriend for more than a few months. My girlfriend Emma was sitting right there. The room got awkward, but Jenna kept going. She ended by saying something like, "But don't worry, he's useful sometimes, like when we need someone to carry boxes." People laughed again, but it felt forced. I was honestly stunned. I hadn't expected a heartfelt tribute or anything, but I also didn't expect to be turned into the punchline of her comedy routine. I tried to brush it off that night, but Emma told me she thought it was incredibly disrespectful. Mark quietly apologized to me later and said Jenna sometimes doesn't know when to stop. The wedding itself went fine the next day, though I kept my interactions with Jenna minimal. 2 weeks later, Jenna called me. She sounded stressed and immediately asked if I could lend her another $3,000 because they had unexpected costs and some bills were due. I asked about the $2,000 she already owed me. She said they'd pay it back eventually, but really needed the extra help right now. That's when I told her no. I explained that after the rehearsal dinner incident, I didn't feel comfortable giving her more money, especially when she hadn't even acknowledged what she said. She laughed and said I was being sensitive and that everyone knew she was joking. I told her jokes are supposed to be funny for everyone involved, not just the person telling them. She got angry and said family is supposed to support each other no matter what. I reminded her that support goes both ways and humiliating someone publicly isn't exactly respectful. Since then, my parents have gotten involved. They say Jenna is overwhelmed with wedding debt and that I should help because I make good money and she's my sister. They also insist the speech wasn't meant to hurt me. Emma and a few friends say I'm absolutely right to refuse and that Jenna crossed a line. Now, the family group chat is awkwardly silent, and my mom keeps sending messages about how important it is to forgive each other. Part of me wonders if I'm overreacting because technically the speech didn't ruin the wedding or anything. But another part of me feels like if I give her money now, it just reinforces the idea that she can treat me however she wants, and I'll still bail her out. So AITA for refusing to lend my sister more money after she publicly humiliated me at her wedding? AITA for refusing to keep paying for my sister's wedding after finding out she lied about why she needed the money? I, 28F, have always been the responsible one in my family. I have a stable job in finance, I save a lot, and I tend to help out when someone in the family is struggling. My younger sister, Lena, 25F, is kind of the opposite. She jumps between jobs, spends money quickly, and usually assumes things will somehow work out. About 8 months ago, Lena got engaged to her boyfriend, Mark. Everyone was excited because they've been together for about 3 years. Not long after the engagement, she called me crying and said they were having serious money problems. She said Mark's hours were cut at work, and they might have to postpone the wedding because they couldn't afford the venue deposit and other costs. She sounded genuinely devastated. Our parents can't help much financially, so I offered to cover the venue deposit as a gift. It was about $3,000. Lena was extremely grateful and said it meant everything to her. Over the next few months, there were several more situations where she said something unexpected came up with the wedding. The photographer needed a bigger deposit. The caterer changed their pricing. The dress alterations cost more than expected. Each time she sounded stressed and embarrassed asking for help. Since I could afford it, I helped. In total, I ended up paying around $9,000 toward different wedding expenses. I didn't really think much about it because I assumed she was struggling and I wanted her to have a nice wedding. About 3 weeks ago, I went out to dinner with Lena and 2 of her friends. They were talking about the bachelorette party they had just had. I didn't go because it was a weekend trip and I had work deadlines. At one point, one of her friends jokingly said something like, "At least Lena finally paid off that Vegas mess before the wedding." I asked what she meant because I hadn't heard about any Vegas trip. The table got quiet and Lena immediately tried to change the subject. Later that night, I asked her directly what that was about. She eventually admitted that about a year ago, she went to Las Vegas with friends and ended up losing around $7,000 gambling. She had put a lot of it on credit cards and had been trying to pay it off. I asked what that had to do with the wedding money I gave her. After a long pause, she admitted that a lot of the money I gave her wasn't actually for wedding costs. She used it to pay down the gambling debt so Mark wouldn't find out. Apparently, Mark doesn't know about the Vegas situation and thinks their wedding budget issues were just from normal expenses. I was honestly stunned. I told her I felt completely lied to. She said she never meant to scam me and that she did use some of the money for the wedding, but paying off the debt was urgent and she panicked. I told her that if she had just told me the truth, I might still have helped her figure something out. Instead, she repeatedly lied and made up fake wedding expenses. She started crying and said I was being dramatic because it's still helping her start her married life without debt. She said family should support each other and that I can easily afford it. What really bothered me is that she said she plans to keep the secret from Mark forever because it would ruin everything. After thinking about it for a few days, I told Lena that I'm not paying for anything else related to the wedding. She recently asked me to cover part of the catering final payment, around $2,500, and I refused. Now she's furious. She says I already committed to helping with the wedding and that backing out this close is going to make things really difficult for them. She also said if I don't help, she might have to tell Mark the truth about the money situation and that it would cause huge problems. Our mom is also upset with me and says that while Lena shouldn't have lied, the damage is already done and I shouldn't risk ruining the wedding over it. I feel like I've already been extremely generous, and I don't like the idea that I'm basically funding a secret she's keeping from her fiancé. But at the same time, I know the wedding is only 2 months away, and my decision might cause serious issues. So, AITA for refusing to give her any more money for the wedding after finding out the truth. AITA for refusing to give my sister my house key after she kept letting herself in. I, 32F, bought my first house about a year ago. It is nothing huge, just a small 2-bedroom place, but I worked really hard for it, and I am proud of finally having my own space. Growing up, my family was always very open door, meaning people would come and go from each other's homes constantly. My mom loved it, my sister loved it, but I always preferred having my own privacy. When I moved in, my sister Claire, 29F, asked if she could have a spare key in case of emergencies. At the time, it sounded reasonable. She lives about 15 minutes away, and I figured it would be helpful if something happened while I was traveling or if I accidentally locked myself out. So I gave her one. At first, it was fine. She used it maybe once to drop off a package when I was working late. But after a few months, things started getting weird. The first time was when I came home from work and found her in my kitchen cooking pasta. She said she was in the neighborhood and hungry. I laughed it off, even though it felt strange. Then it happened again, except this time she brought a friend. They were sitting in my living room watching TV like it was their place. I told her it made me uncomfortable and asked her to text before coming over. She apologized and said she didn't realize it bothered me. For a couple weeks, everything was normal again. Then I started noticing little things. My laundry would be moved from the dryer to the couch. The dog treats I keep in the cabinet would be missing. Once I came home and my shower was wet like someone had just used it, I texted Claire, and she casually admitted she had stopped by to shower because her hot water wasn't working that day. I told her again that she needed to ask first. She said I was being overly sensitive because we're family. The thing that really set me off happened last month. I came home early from a work trip that was supposed to last 4 days. I walked in and immediately heard voices upstairs. For a second, I thought someone had broken in. Nope. It was Claire and her boyfriend in my guest room. Apparently, they had been staying there because his apartment had some issue with the plumbing. They had been there 2 nights already. My house smelled like takeout. There were dishes in the sink, and they had moved some of my things around to make space for their stuff. Claire looked surprised to see me and said she thought I wouldn't be back until Friday. I asked why she didn't ask me first. She said she assumed it would be fine because the room was basically empty anyway. I told them they needed to leave that night. Claire got really defensive and said I was kicking her out over nothing. Her boyfriend looked embarrassed and packed their bags while she kept arguing with me. After they left, I was furious. I realized I didn't feel comfortable knowing she could just walk into my house whenever she wanted. So the next day, I changed the locks. Claire found out a week later when she tried to come in while I was at work. She texted me asking why her key didn't work. I told her I changed the locks because she kept entering my home without permission. She absolutely blew up. She said I was humiliating her and treating her like a criminal. She also told our parents, who think I am overreacting and being territorial. My mom said family members shouldn't need permission to visit each other, and that Claire was only using the space because she trusted me. Claire is now demanding I give her the new key because she says emergencies happen and I am being paranoid. I told her she can still come over whenever she wants. She just has to ask first like a normal person. She says the fact that I do not trust her with a key proves I value my house more than my own sister. Now, my parents keep telling me I should apologize and give her another key to keep the peace. But honestly, I finally feel relaxed in my own home again, knowing no one could just walk in. Still, the amount of backlash I am getting from my family is making me question myself. AITA for changing the locks and refusing to give my sister a key to my house anymore. AITA for refusing to let my sister move into the apartment I inherited, even though the rest of my family says I owe it to her. I, 29M, recently inherited my grandmother's small 2-bedroom apartment. It's nothing fancy, but it's in a good part of the city and fully paid off. My grandmother and I were very close growing up. I spent a lot of weekends with her, helped her with groceries, fixed things around her place, and visited her regularly even after I moved out on my own. My sister Maya, 26F, on the other hand, barely visited unless it was a holiday. When my grandmother passed away last year, she left the apartment to me specifically in her will. The rest of her assets were split among my mom, aunt, and uncle. I didn't ask for the apartment and honestly didn't expect it, but she told me once that she wanted someone responsible to have it and not sell immediately. At the time, Maya didn't say much about it. She just shrugged and said, "Well, you were always Grandma's favorite." I thought it was a little bitter, but I figured she was grieving. For the first 6 months, I kept living in my old rented place while slowly fixing up the apartment. It needed some repairs and new appliances. I spent a lot of my own money updating it because I planned to move in eventually. Then Maya's situation changed. She broke up with her boyfriend and had to move out of the place they shared. Apparently, he was the one paying most of the rent. She called me crying and asked if she could temporarily stay in the apartment. At first, I was open to the idea. I told her she could stay for maybe a month while she figured things out. But when we talked more, it became clear she wasn't thinking of it as temporary. She said something like, "Honestly, you already have a place. Why don't I just live there for a while? It's basically empty anyway." I explained that I planned to move there myself once the renovations were done. She then suggested I could let her stay long-term if she paid a small amount of rent. The problem is that I know my sister. She's not great with money. She's had several jobs over the years, but tends to quit when things get stressful. I've also loaned her money in the past, and it usually takes months or years to get it back, if I ever do. So I told her I wasn't comfortable with a long-term arrangement. I repeated that she could stay for a short time if she really needed to. She got upset and said I was being selfish. She said I was sitting on a free apartment while she was struggling. I tried to explain that it isn't really free. I'm paying for renovations, property taxes, utilities, and all the other costs that come with owning it. Plus, it's my home now. She hung up on me. A few days later, my mom called. Apparently, Maya had told her that I refused to help her and was hoarding the apartment. My mom said that family should support each other and that Maya just needs stability right now. I asked my mom if Maya had mentioned that I offered to let her stay temporarily. My mom said Maya told her I put too many conditions on it. Then my aunt called too. She said my grandmother would want the apartment to help the family, not create conflict. That made me feel really guilty because my grandmother was the kind of person who always helped people. But at the same time, my grandmother specifically chose to give the apartment to me. I can't help but feel like she trusted me to take care of it. The situation escalated last week when Maya showed up at the apartment while I was there installing kitchen cabinets. She brought 2 suitcases with her. She said, "I'm just going to stay here for a bit. You can't seriously expect me to be homeless while you're doing DIY projects." I told her she couldn't just move in without us agreeing on something. She argued that it was family property and that I didn't earn anyway. That comment really bothered me. I might not have paid for the apartment, but I did spend years helping my grandmother when others didn't. We argued for almost an hour. Eventually, I told her she had to leave and that if she tried to move in without permission, I'd change the locks. She left crying, and now my phone has been blowing up with messages from relatives saying I'm being heartless. Some of them think I should just let her live there until she gets back on her feet, but nobody can explain what that timeline actually means. Part of me feels like if I give in, she might stay for years, and I'll never get my own place back. Another part of me wonders if I'm being too protective of something I didn't even buy. Right now, Maya is staying with a friend, but keeps texting me saying I've abandoned her when she needed me most. So AITA for refusing to let my sister move into the apartment I inherited? Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to help my sister after she publicly humiliated me at her wedding. I, 29M, have always had a complicated relationship with my older sister Claire, 33F. Growing up, she was the golden child. She was outgoing, popular, and my parents constantly praised her achievements. I was quieter and more introverted, the kid who liked books and video games more than parties and sports. It wasn't that my parents ignored me completely, but Claire always seemed to get the spotlight. As adults, our relationship improved a bit. We don't live in the same city, but we talk occasionally and see each other during holidays. When Claire got engaged last year, she asked me to be part of the wedding party as a groomsman on her fiancé's side because she said she wanted me involved but didn't want to deal with uneven sides. I thought that was a little weird, but I agreed because she seemed excited. In the months leading up to the wedding, I tried to be supportive. I attended planning dinners, helped assemble decorations, and even spent an entire weekend helping her fiancé build wooden centerpieces because apparently the ones Claire liked online were too expensive. I didn't complain because I figured weddings are stressful and helping family is just what you do. The problem started during the rehearsal dinner. Claire decided she wanted people to share funny stories about the couple. When it was my turn, I told a pretty harmless story about the first time I met her fiancé and how he accidentally set off the smoke alarm while trying to cook pasta. Everyone laughed, including him. Claire smiled too, but it looked forced. Later that night, she pulled me aside and said my story made her look bad because it implied her fiancé was incompetent. I was confused because it was clearly a joke and he had laughed about it himself. She told me I should apologize during the wedding speeches. I thought she was exaggerating, but I said I'd keep things positive in my speech. The wedding day itself was beautiful, and everything seemed to go well until the reception speeches. When Claire stood up to give her speech, she started talking about family and childhood memories. Then suddenly she turned to me and said something like, "And to my little brother, thanks for always trying to be funny even when the jokes don't land." People chuckled awkwardly. Then she went on and told several stories about how I was a weird kid, how I once cried during a school play rehearsal, and how I spent most of high school alone in my room. She framed it like affectionate teasing, but the way she said it made it sound like I was some kind of embarrassing family joke. The room was full of her friends, coworkers, and my extended family. I felt completely humiliated. When it was my turn to speak, I scrapped the speech I had prepared. I kept it very short, congratulated them, and sat down. I didn't make any jokes or mention anything personal. After the reception, Claire confronted me again and said my speech was cold and made things awkward. I told her I didn't feel like giving a heartfelt speech after she spent 5 minutes roasting me in front of everyone. She rolled her eyes and said I was being dramatic and that it was obviously just jokes. I left shortly after that. Here's where the current problem comes in. About 2 weeks ago, Claire called me asking for a huge favor. She and her husband are moving, and apparently they're short on money because the wedding went way over budget. She asked if I could lend them several $1,000s to help cover the deposit on their new place. I told her I wasn't comfortable lending that much money right now. She kept pushing and eventually asked if I was still sulking about the wedding. I said yes. Actually, I was still upset because she embarrassed me in front of a room full of people and never apologized. She laughed and said I needed to grow up because siblings tease each other. I told her teasing is different from publicly humiliating someone during your wedding speech. At that point, I said something like, "If you want my help, the least you could do is acknowledge you crossed a line." She refused and said I was holding a grudge over nothing. Now my parents are involved. They say Claire is stressed about the move and that I should help if I can because family supports each other. My mom even said Claire probably didn't realize how her speech came across and that I'm being overly sensitive. The thing is, it's not really about the money. I could technically afford to lend it, although it would definitely make things tight for a while. What bothers me is the principle of it. She humiliated me, dismissed my feelings when I brought it up, and now expects financial help without even a simple apology. Some relatives are siding with me, saying Claire has always had a habit of making jokes at other people's expense. Others think I'm escalating a small issue into a family conflict. Claire texted me yesterday saying, "I hope you're happy letting your sister struggle just because you can't take a joke." That message made me feel guilty, but also angry. So now I'm stuck wondering if I'm being petty by refusing to help her financially over something that happened at her wedding. AITA? AITA for refusing to give my sister the spare bedroom in the house I bought because she assumed it would be hers? I'm 29F, and about 6 months ago, I finally bought my first house. It's nothing huge, just a small 2-bedroom place in a quiet neighborhood. But I worked incredibly hard for it. I spent years saving, working overtime, skipping vacations, and living in a tiny apartment with 2 roommates so I could afford the down payment. My older sister, Jenna, 32F, has always had a very different lifestyle. She's the kind of person who lives very much in the moment. She changes jobs a lot, moves around frequently, and tends to spend money as soon as she has it. Our parents have helped her out financially several times over the years, which has always caused a little tension between us because they never had to help me the same way. When I bought my house, everyone in the family was excited. My parents came to see it, my brother helped me move furniture, and I even hosted a small housewarming dinner. During that dinner, Jenna kept talking about how nice the spare bedroom was and how perfect it would be as a guest room. At the time, I didn't think much of it. Fast forward about 2 months. Jenna calls me one evening, sounding stressed. She tells me that her lease is ending soon and that her landlord is raising the rent. Then she casually says something like, "Good thing you have that spare room. I'll just move in with you for a while until I figure things out." I honestly thought she was joking, but when I laughed, she went quiet and said, "Wait, you thought I was kidding?" Apparently, she had been telling people that she'd be moving into my house temporarily. I told her that I hadn't planned on having a roommate. The spare bedroom was meant to be an office and guest room, and I was really looking forward to finally having my own space after years of sharing apartments. She immediately got defensive and said it wouldn't be a big deal. According to her, it would only be for a couple of months. She also pointed out that families should help each other and that I had the space anyway. I told her that having the physical space doesn't mean I'm obligated to give it up. I also explained that once someone moves in, it's rarely just for a couple of months. I've seen this happen with friends where temporary situations turn into a year or more. She got upset and accused me of being selfish. Then things escalated. She told our parents that I was refusing to help her when she was basically about to be homeless. That's not actually true. She has time before her lease ends, and she makes decent money. She just doesn't want to pay the higher rent or look for another apartment right now. My parents called me and asked if I could reconsider. They said it would only be temporary and that it would mean a lot to Jenna. I asked them if she would be paying rent or contributing to bills. They said she probably couldn't afford much at the moment and that I should be understanding because I'm more financially stable. That honestly made me more frustrated. Part of the reason I'm financially stable is because I spent years planning and sacrificing. Jenna made different choices, which is her right, but I don't think that means I should automatically give up my space. When I told them I still wasn't comfortable with the idea, my mom said I was being cold and that family should come first. Now, Jenna is barely speaking to me. My parents are clearly disappointed, and even my brother said I might be making this into a bigger deal than it needs to be. The thing is, I finally feel like I have a place that's mine. After years of cramped living situations, I was excited about having control over my own home. The thought of suddenly having a long-term house guest, especially someone who already assumed they were entitled to the space, makes me really uneasy. At the same time, I do feel guilty because technically I do have a spare room and she is my sister. But the way she just decided she would move in without even asking first really rubbed me the wrong way. So now the family tension is growing. I'm starting to wonder if I'm being unreasonable. AITA for refusing to let my sister move into the spare bedroom of the house I worked so hard to buy. AITA for refusing to keep funding my brother's temporary situation after it turned into 2 years of excuses. I, 32M, have always been the stable one in my family. I work a regular office job, nothing glamorous, but it pays well enough that I live comfortably and have some savings. My younger brother Jake, 28M, has always been more of a free spirit. That's the polite way my parents describe it. The less polite way is that he jumps from one idea to another and rarely sticks with anything long enough for it to work. About 2 years ago, Jake called me in a panic. He had been living in another city, working at a startup that apparently collapsed overnight. According to him, everyone got laid off with almost no warning. He had just signed a lease and had no savings left because he'd put everything into investments that didn't pan out. He asked if he could stay with me for a couple weeks while he figured things out. I live in a 2-bedroom apartment, and I genuinely felt bad for him. So I said yes without hesitation. My only conditions were that he help with groceries and actively look for a job. The first couple weeks were fine. Jake seemed motivated. He talked about applications he was sending out and interviews he might get. I didn't mind covering most of the bills at the time because I thought it was temporary. Then the weeks turned into months. Jake would say he had interviews lined up, but somehow none of them ever turned into real offers. He also started getting into different projects. First it was a podcast idea. Then it was day trading crypto. Then it was an online store selling custom keyboard keycaps. Each one required some kind of small upfront investment, and somehow I kept getting asked if I could float him money just until it took off. I helped at first. I lent him a few hundred here and there, because he'd promised it was the last time he'd ask. Spoiler alert, it was never the last time. Meanwhile, he wasn't contributing to rent or utilities. He'd occasionally buy groceries, but that was about it. I started noticing he stayed up until 3 a.m. playing games and slept until noon. Every time I brought up jobs, he'd say he was focusing on opportunities that aligned with his skills instead of taking just any job. After about 8 months, I told him he needed to start paying some rent or find another place. He agreed and even said he had freelance work coming in. For exactly 1 month, he gave me 200 euros. After that, the payments mysteriously stopped because a client ghosted him. The breaking point came last week. I got home from work, and Jake casually asked if I could lend him 2,000 euros. Apparently, he wanted to join some online course that promised to teach him high-ticket sales, and he was convinced it would change his life. I laughed because I genuinely thought he was joking. He was not joking. I told him there was no way I was giving him that kind of money after everything else. I also told him that he'd been living with me for 2 years, and it was time to figure out a real plan that didn't involve me funding it. Jake got defensive immediately. He said family is supposed to support each other and that I'm lucky to have a stable job while he's still trying to find his path. He also said that if I believed in him, I'd see the 2,000 euros as an investment in his future. I replied that if he really believed in the course, he should get a normal job for a couple months and pay for it himself. He got really quiet and then said something that honestly shocked me. He said the reason he hasn't taken a regular job is because he assumed I didn't mind supporting him since I make so much more money than he does. For the record, I do okay, but I'm not rich. Supporting two adults in this city is expensive. I told him that assumption was completely wrong and that he had 3 months to find a job and move out. I even said I'd help him look for apartments and move his stuff when the time came. He called our parents after that conversation. Now my phone has been blowing up with messages from my mom saying I'm being too harsh and that Jake just needs more time. My dad said kicking him out could ruin his confidence when he's already struggling. Jake is now barely talking to me except for short passive-aggressive comments like hope the rent check from your tenant arrives soon. Part of me feels guilty because he is my brother and I know he's always been more lost career-wise. But another part of me feels like I've already given him way more time and money than most people would. So now I'm wondering if I crossed the line by finally putting a deadline on him moving out. AITA? AITA for refusing to pay for my sister's wedding after she replaced my daughter as flower girl. I'm 38M and my younger sister Emily is 31F. We've always been close growing up, especially after our parents passed away when she was in college. I helped her financially through the last year of school and later when she had trouble finding a job. I never held it over her head, but she has often said that I was more like a second parent than just a brother. I'm married and have a 6-year-old daughter named Lily. Emily absolutely adores Lily. For years, she has said Lily would be the flower girl at her wedding someday. It was something she brought up repeatedly at family gatherings, sometimes even joking that Lily had the role before she even met a groom. Emily got engaged last year to her fiancé, Mark. Everyone was happy for them. A few months later, she asked if Lily could officially be the flower girl. My daughter was ecstatic. Emily even took her dress shopping and bought her a little pink dress that Lily kept hanging on her closet door because she liked looking at it. The wedding planning was stressful for Emily. She kept saying everything was expensive and overwhelming. I make significantly more money than she does, and I wanted to help. I offered to cover the venue deposit and later ended up paying for the catering as well. Altogether, it's around $12,000 so far. I told her not to worry about paying me back, just to focus on having a nice day. About 3 weeks ago, things started getting weird. Emily called me and said Mark's parents were very involved in the wedding decisions now. Apparently, they are more traditional and wanted certain things done their way. I didn't think much of it at the time. Then last weekend, Emily came over looking nervous. She said she had something awkward to tell me. Mark's sister apparently has a 7-year-old daughter who really wants to be in the wedding. Mark's parents were pushing for their granddaughter to be the flower girl. Emily said they felt it would be more appropriate for their side of the family. I asked what that meant for Lily. Emily said maybe Lily could still walk down the aisle, but not officially as flower girl, or maybe help pass out programs. My daughter was sitting in the living room coloring when this conversation happened, and she overheard her name. She asked if she was still throwing flowers. Emily hesitated and said something like, "We're still figuring it out." Lily didn't say much then, but later that night, she asked my wife if she did something wrong. She thought maybe Emily didn't want her anymore. Seeing my kid upset about something that had been promised to her for years honestly made me furious. I called Emily the next day and asked directly if Lily was being replaced. She admitted yes. Mark's niece would be the flower girl now because it would keep peace with his parents. She kept saying it wasn't personal and that Lily could still be involved somehow. I told her that wasn't okay. Lily had already been promised the role, had the dress, and had been excited for months. Emily said weddings are complicated and she had a compromise. I then told her that if Lily was being pushed aside to please Mark's parents, I wasn't comfortable continuing to fund the wedding. Emily got quiet and then asked if I was seriously threatening to pull financial support over a flower girl role. I said it wasn't about flowers. It was about treating my daughter like she was disposable the moment someone more politically convenient came along. Emily started crying and said she's under huge pressure from Mark's family and that I'm making things harder. She argued that it's still her wedding and she should be able to make adjustments without financial consequences. I told her that's true, but it's also my money and I'm not obligated to keep paying if my daughter is being hurt in the process. I said if Lily remains part of the wedding as the flower girl like originally planned, I'll gladly keep covering the costs. Otherwise, she and Mark can handle the rest themselves. Now Emily is extremely upset and our relatives are getting involved. Some say I'm right to defend my daughter. Others say I'm weaponizing money and punishing Emily over something small. Emily sent me a long message saying I'm forcing her to choose between peace with her future in-laws and financial disaster. She said she thought I supported her unconditionally. My wife is on my side, but thinks the whole situation has spiraled way beyond what it should have been. At this point, the venue balance and catering payments are due soon, and Emily keeps asking if I'm actually going to follow through with pulling the money. So, AITA for refusing to pay for the wedding unless my daughter stays the flower girl. AITA for refusing to cancel my wedding after my sister announced her pregnancy at my engagement party. I, 29F, got engaged to my fiancé Mark, 31M, last year after being together for 5 years. It was honestly one of the happiest moments of my life. We are not flashy people, but we wanted to celebrate with our families and close friends, so we hosted a small engagement party at my parents' house. For context, my younger sister Lily, 26F, has always been the center of attention type in our family. Growing up, everything somehow became about her. If I had a recital, she would suddenly feel sick. If I had a birthday party, she would start crying about something. My parents always told me to be the bigger person because she was more sensitive than me. I try to not let that dynamic affect my relationship with her as adults. We're not super close, but we're civil. When I got engaged, she seemed happy for me and even offered to help with some wedding planning. At the engagement party, everything was going well. People were congratulating us. My fiancé's parents had just given a toast, and the mood was really warm and happy. Then Lily stood up and clinked her glass and said she had an announcement too. I assumed she was joking or maybe going to say something sweet about us. Instead, she said, very dramatically, I didn't want to steal your thunder, but since everyone's here, I'm pregnant. Everyone started cheering and congratulating her. My mom immediately started crying and hugging her. Within minutes, the entire party shifted from our engagement celebration to a pregnancy celebration. People were asking Lily questions, touching her stomach, talking about baby names, etc. Meanwhile, Mark and I were basically standing in the corner like background characters. I tried to stay positive because I didn't want to cause a scene, but I was honestly hurt. It felt like the one event that was supposed to be about us became about her instead. Later that night, I quietly told Lily that while I was happy for her, I wish she had waited for another time to announce it. She rolled her eyes and said I was being dramatic and that good news is good news. My mom overheard and told me I should be happy I'm getting a niece or nephew instead of worrying about attention. I decided to let it go and move on with planning the wedding. Mark and I set the date for October this year. Fast forward a few months. Lily's pregnancy progressed normally, and our family started focusing heavily on the baby. That's fine, babies are exciting. But then things started getting weird. First, my mom suggested that maybe my wedding date should change because Lily's due date is in late September. She said Lily will probably be exhausted and not able to fully enjoy the wedding. I thought that was a strange reason, but I said we'd think about it. Then Lily herself asked if I would consider postponing the wedding until the following year, so she could have time to recover and bring the baby. I told her that wasn't possible because we had already booked the venue, photographer, catering, everything. It would cost thousands to move it. She got upset and said I was being selfish for scheduling such a big event right after she gives birth. I reminded her that we set the date before we even knew she was pregnant. Things escalated when my mom called me and said maybe we should delay the wedding because the family will be busy with the newborn. I asked her if she was serious. She said a new baby is more important than a party. That comment really hurt because my wedding is not just a party to me. Mark has been incredibly supportive through all this and says we should absolutely keep our date. But now my parents are acting cold toward me, and my sister keeps making passive-aggressive comments about how I don't care about family. Some relatives have started messaging me, saying it wouldn't hurt to push the wedding back a few months so Lily can attend comfortably. Others say Lily can simply come if she wants, or stay home if she doesn't. At this point, I'm refusing to change anything. The deposits are paid, the invitations are already being designed, and honestly, I feel like I've already given up enough moments to Lily over the years. But the pressure from my family is intense, and they keep making me feel like I'm some kind of villain for not prioritizing the baby over my wedding. So, AITA for refusing to postpone my wedding just because my sister is having a baby around the same time. AITA for refusing to keep paying for my sister's temporary situation after it turned into a year. I, 31F, have always been the more financially stable one in my family. I'm not rich, but I have a solid job in project management, no kids, and I'm careful with my money. My sister Maya, 28F, has always been the opposite. She's creative and spontaneous, but terrible with planning. Growing up, this just meant she forgot homework or lost her phone. As adults, it means she jumps from job to job and often ends up needing help. About a year ago, Maya called me crying. Her roommate had suddenly moved out, and she couldn't afford the rent alone. She said she just needed a little help while she found a better job. She promised it would be 2 months, maybe 3 at the absolute most. I felt bad and agreed to help cover half her rent temporarily. It wasn't cheap, but I could manage it if it was short term. The first couple months seemed normal. She kept saying she was applying for jobs and interviewing. Then month 4 came. She said the job market was bad. Month 6 came, and she said she had taken some freelance gigs, but they weren't steady. Around that time, I started noticing she was going out a lot. She'd post photos from bars, concerts, brunch places, and weekend trips with friends. It didn't sit right with me that I was paying her rent while she was clearly spending money on fun things. I tried talking to her about it. She said those things were either cheap, paid for by friends, or important for networking because she's in a creative field. I didn't want to be controlling, so I backed off, but I told her I couldn't keep helping forever. By month 8, I was getting really frustrated. I had already paid thousands of dollars at that point. When I brought it up again, she got emotional and said she felt like I was holding the money over her head and making her feel like a failure. She promised things would improve soon. Fast forward to last week. It has officially been a year. I asked her directly what her plan was because I couldn't keep doing this. She admitted she still didn't have a stable job, but said she was figuring things out and asked if I could help a few more months. I told her no. I said I had already helped for a year and that it was supposed to be temporary. I also told her it bothered me seeing her lifestyle online while I was essentially subsidizing her rent. She got really quiet and then accused me of judging her and not understanding how hard her career path is. Later that night, my mom called me. Apparently, Maya had told her everything but framed it as me suddenly cutting her off without warning. My mom said family should help each other and that I'm in a better position financially, so it wouldn't hurt me to keep helping a bit longer. She also said Maya is sensitive and I might have damaged our relationship by being cold. I pushed back and reminded my mom that I had already been helping for an entire year, which was never the agreement. My mom said that since I could afford it, I should show more compassion. Now the whole situation has become awkward. Maya hasn't spoken to me since our argument, except for a short text saying she thought I believed in her dreams. My mom keeps hinting that I should reconsider because Maya might lose her apartment. Part of me feels guilty because technically I could keep helping even though it would delay some of my own plans like saving for a home. But another part of me feels like I've already done more than enough and that continuing would just enable her to avoid dealing with her situation. Some of my friends say I've been way too generous already and that my sister is taking advantage of me. Others say family support sometimes lasts longer than expected and cutting her off now could really hurt her. Now I'm stuck wondering if I was too harsh or if this is just the consequence of a boundary that should have been set months ago. So AITA for refusing to keep paying for my sister's temporary living situation after helping her for a year. AITA for refusing to let my sister bring her emotional support boyfriend to my wedding. I, 29F, got married 2 weeks ago to my husband Daniel, 31M. We had a fairly small wedding planned, about 70 people, mostly close family and friends. I'm generally a pretty easygoing person, but I'm also someone who likes clear plans. Weddings are expensive and complicated, and I spent over a year organizing everything. My younger sister, Lily, 26F, has always been dramatic. I don't mean that as an insult exactly. It's just how she is. Every family event somehow ends up revolving around whatever situation she's currently dealing with. A breakup, a job crisis, a sudden new passion project, you name it. About 6 months ago, she started dating a guy named Ryan, 27M. At first, I didn't mind. The issue is that Ryan has this habit of inserting himself into everything and acting like he's the center of attention. At my bridal shower, he gave a long speech about how love is fragile and temporary, and somehow made the entire thing about how hard dating is for men. So when we sent out wedding invitations, I only invited Lily. Our guest list was already tight, and we only gave plus ones to people who were married, engaged, or in very long-term relationships. Lily and Ryan had been dating for maybe 3 months at the time. When Lily saw the invitation, she called me immediately and asked where Ryan's invite was. I explained the situation and said it wasn't personal. She got quiet and then said that Ryan was very important to her emotional well-being and that it would be hard for her to attend without him. I thought she was joking, but she said he was basically her emotional support person and she didn't feel comfortable going to big family events alone. I told her she wouldn't be alone. Our parents would be there, our cousins would be there, and obviously I'd be there. She said that wasn't the same because family events are stressful. A few weeks later, she brought Ryan to dinner at our parents' house, and he brought it up again himself. He literally said, "Lily told me I might not be welcome at the wedding," which feels a little hostile. I explained again that the guest list was limited. He said that if Lily felt anxious without him, then it was kind of unfair to expect her to show up unsupported. He also used the phrase emotional support boyfriend, which I had never heard before and honestly thought he was being sarcastic. Apparently he wasn't. After that, Lily started texting me long messages saying I was excluding someone important in her life and that it made her feel like I didn't respect her relationship. I finally told her that my wedding wasn't the place for someone who had already made multiple awkward speeches and tried to turn events into philosophical debates about relationships. That probably wasn't the nicest way to phrase it, but I was getting frustrated. She accused me of judging Ryan and said I barely knew him. I pointed out that the few times I had met him, he had managed to derail conversations every single time. Things were tense for a while, but eventually she said she would still come to the wedding. Fast forward to the day before the wedding rehearsal. Lily called me crying and said she was having second thoughts about attending because Ryan felt hurt and she didn't want him sitting at home feeling rejected. At that point, I snapped a little and said if she wanted to skip her sister's wedding because her boyfriend of 6 months felt left out, then that was her decision. She did end up coming, but she was pretty distant the entire time. During the reception, she made a comment to one of my cousins about how some people don't support their siblings' relationships. Now that the wedding is over, Lily is still upset. She says I disrespected her partner and treated him like he didn't matter. Ryan apparently also thinks I was being controlling and that weddings should be inclusive. My parents think I should have just let him come to keep the peace, but a few of my friends said they would have done the exact same thing. Lily and I used to be really close, so part of me feels bad that this has turned into such a big conflict. But another part of me feels like it was one day that was supposed to be about me and Daniel, and I shouldn't have to accommodate someone who already showed a pattern of making things about himself. So now I'm wondering if I was being stubborn. AITA for refusing to invite my sister's emotional support boyfriend to my wedding. AITA for refusing to help my sister after she publicly blamed me for ruining her wedding. I, 29F, have always been the responsible one in my family. My younger sister Emma, 26F, has always been more spontaneous. Growing up, that meant she was the fun one, while I was the one our parents trusted with things like watching a house, helping relatives move, and organizing family events. I never minded too much, because I do like planning things and keeping things running smoothly. 2 years ago, Emma got engaged to her fiancé, Daniel. When they first started planning the wedding, Emma asked me to be her maid of honor. I said yes immediately because we have always been close, and I was genuinely excited for her. Very quickly, though, the planning started becoming a lot more work than I expected. Emma would constantly text me late at night with new ideas she saw on social media. Sometimes she would change the theme 3 times in one week. First it was rustic, then modern garden, then vintage fairy tale. Every time she changed the theme, she expected me to redo decorations, invitations, seating mock-ups, and sometimes even contact vendors again. She also asked me to handle most of the planning because she said she was too stressed with work. At the time, I didn't complain because I wanted her wedding to be special. Things started getting more tense about 3 months before the wedding. Emma suddenly decided she wanted the reception at a different venue because she said the original one felt boring. The problem was that the new venue was way more expensive and required a bigger deposit immediately. Emma didn't have the money ready and asked me if I could temporarily put the deposit on my credit card until she paid me back. I told her I couldn't afford to do that. I recently bought my own apartment and my finances are pretty tight. She seemed annoyed but said she understood. A few weeks later, at a family dinner, she brought it up again in front of everyone. She said something like, "I guess some people care more about their apartment than their sister's wedding." I was embarrassed and tried to explain that I simply couldn't afford it, but she brushed it off and changed the subject. After that, I noticed she started being colder toward me. The real issue happened the week of the wedding. Emma had apparently still been trying to secure the new venue, but things were falling through because the deposit hadn't been paid quickly enough. The original venue had already booked another event for that weekend since she canceled. So suddenly she had nowhere to hold the reception. She called me in a panic and asked if I could fix it since I had been handling everything anyway. I spent an entire evening calling places and managed to find a small local hall that was available. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean and affordable, and honestly the only place left that could accommodate their guest list on such short notice. I thought she would be relieved. Instead, she started crying and saying it was ugly and that her wedding was ruined. I told her it was the best option we had given the circumstances. She eventually agreed, but was clearly unhappy. The wedding day itself actually went pretty well. The ceremony was beautiful, and most guests seemed to enjoy the reception. However, during Emma's speech, she made a comment that completely blindsided me. She joked that planning a wedding is hard when your maid of honor drops the ball. She said if she had been able to get the venue she wanted, things would have been perfect. A lot of people laughed awkwardly and looked at me. Afterwards, several relatives asked what happened, and Emma told them that I refused to help with the deposit, and that's why they lost the venue. She made it sound like I sabotaged her wedding out of jealousy or something. I was honestly shocked. I had spent 2 years helping plan everything, and the one boundary I set was suddenly being turned into proof that I didn't care. I confronted her the next day and told her what she said was unfair. She doubled down and said that if I had just helped her financially, none of this would have happened. I reminded her that I never agreed to fund any part of the wedding. She told me families should support each other and that I embarrassed her by not stepping up. Since then, she has been struggling with some wedding debt and recently asked if I could help pay for part of it since, in her words, I contributed to the problem. I told her no. I said I already gave my time and energy for 2 years, and I'm not responsible for her financial decisions. Now some relatives are telling me I should just help to keep the peace because she's my sister and weddings are emotional. Others think she was completely out of line for blaming me publicly. Emma is still upset and says I abandoned her when she needed me most. So, AITA for refusing to help her now after she blamed me for ruining her wedding? Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos also. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.